Good morning. Glad to see all of you. Definitely, I'm not Jacob. I'm vice president. My name is Dr. Marita Vargas. I was the director of the Counseling, Health, and Testing Center. Here we are, and we have a fine person here who has been here a year now. She's coming from KU. And I'll let her speak to her own background of the things that she has done and her kind of specialties. And so with that, I could just turn over the morning. Tamara.
Yes, thank you so much, Marita. Hi, everybody. As Marita said, my name is Tamara Falicov, and I have actually only been here less than a year. So I'm going to tell you, as we're finishing the semester, one academic year is going to soon be behind us. And I'm really happy to share with you the history of the school, which is a new one, and then what we've done together as faculty and students in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. And because I know a lot of you are academics, I hope you'll indulge me in telling you a little bit about my academic background, because I think a lot of that informs the thinking that I am bringing to my administrative position. So usually I won't bore people with the research stuff because, well, that's research, but you all care about research. So that makes me so happy. And I hope we have time to go around and talk about who you are as well, since I'm new and I'd love to learn more. I'd like how Maria introduced herself in terms of her research specialty. So I do talk kind of fast, so I think there will be time. Let's see what happens. All right, so you can see I'm now going to be a professor in media, art, and design, which is a new department, and a new department which is called Race, Ethnic, and Gender Studies, or REG. So I'm the dean of the school, but I'm also a professor, and I think that's really important that we don't make this big divide between administrators and faculty, because we are also faculty, so we understand where faculty are coming from, where students are coming from. So a little bit about me. I am someone who was born in Chicago. I'm a Midwesterner. My parents immigrated from Buenos Aires, Argentina in the early 60s to Chicago. My father was recruited to work in the south side of Chicago at Mount Sinai Hospital as a cardiologist. So he studied at the Facultad de Medicina in Buenos Aires, and I grew up speaking Spanish. So that's my first language. But in 1979, there was a huge blizzard. If some of you remember, I don't know if it came to Kansas City, and my parents said, "Ya basta, nos vamos." That means we're finished. We don't like the snow. We're moving to California. So I was really raised in San Diego. I ended up going to University of California, Berkeley as an undergraduate, and I studied sociology. And then I I went back and I lived at home. As Argentine families, they like to stick together until you get married or something else. So I lived at home and I got my PhD in communication at UC San Diego, UCSD. But I really wanted to get to know my family in Argentina. And when I was an undergrad, I was very interested in the role of art and culture and politics. And so I wrote my thesis on Václav Havel, this absurdist playwright from what is now the Czech Republic, and how he used his culture to, he went to jail. He was persona non grata under the Soviet domination, but then became president. So how can an artist or playwright become president? That's fascinating to me. So I used Antonio Gramsci, which is this Marxist cultural theorist, to look at his movement of position and maneuver. I'm trying to remember the terms, but point is, I love doing this, but someone was like, Tamara, now you have to learn Czech. Like, if you really want to continue your studies, you have to know the primary language to research the primary sources. And I realized, wait a minute, I speak Spanish. I don't speak Czech. What am I doing? And I'm, a child of immigrants. My parents spoke Spanish to me at the dinner table, and our sisters responded back in English. Hey, Bonnie. So I had to learn Spanish formally. So I got a FLAS fellowship in grad school, and I got a Fulbright to Argentina. And I went down there and I got to know my family, and I interviewed filmmakers. And when I was down there, people couldn't believe that I would study their film industry. They said, "You're from California, don't you know Madonna?" And I said, "Well, not first name basis, even though we call her that, no." So point is, this is how I got my academic career going, and these are the two books that I've written. And so you can see very academic, right? This is esoteric. This is a particular group of scholars studying Latin America. But then I pivoted. I pivoted to a more community engaged research, and that really aligned very well with the vision for the new school. I loved the research that I do. I was just in Istanbul working on film festival research, but I realized that knowing the language and the culture of Latin America really helps the Latino community here, the diasporic community, which is what my parents are. So I started getting involved with KU Medical Center and Children's Mercy Hospital, and also Haskell Indian Nations University, which is in Lawrence, and we created a Health, Humanities, and Arts Research Collaborative during the height of the pandemic, where all of us got on Zoom and we talked about how can we create research clusters to humanize the medical field. And I feel like I can see this because my mom is a psychologist. Like, I have seen the healthcare field and they're trying to help it too. And it's super important. I'm not saying it's not broken, but in certain ways it is, especially during the pandemic. That really opened up a huge breach of health disparities. So this is why I think I was really well positioned when I learned about this new school, that we could start working with our faculty on these community questions. So this is me with a colleague of mine in Lawrence, Kansas. She speaks not just Spanish, but MEPA, which is an indigenous language. And I worked with this community in Lawrence through Centro Hispano. So we worked with a nonprofit, and they worked in service to a community of people who speak two languages, and the parents really want to learn English. And their children don't want to speak the indigenous language. They cannot speak to their grandparents back in Mexico. And so we created a digital dictionary. So this is digital humanities, where the community speaks words in MEPA into their smartphones, record the word in MEPA, and then it gets translated into Spanish and English. And we got a grant through the Humanities Kansas as a cultural preservation grant. How can these children learn their language because it's endangered? Like, that kills me when I think of endangered species and languages, like, what is going on? And this was something that really was meaningful for me. I'm getting to the school in a minute. Okay, I know. That's the academic piece that I really wanted to share with you. So what happened? I was at KU for 24 years. I was the chair of film and media studies. I then moved into the dean's office over there. We had 50 departments at KU. I was in charge of 14 to 17, depending on the year. Seriously. And I was first hired to do research in the arts and humanities. So you can tell my passion is research. How can our creative artists and our social scientists and our humanists take their work and make it be known to the world? How do we disseminate that work, especially in the community? And then I'm very interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We created a dean's cabinet. We had faculty, staff, and students talk about how do people feel being in this climate? Are they being listened to? Is there equity across the board or not? I know this is a dangerous term to be bandying about right now with our legislature, but I still think it's very important that people feel like they have a place at the table. So I'm very open about it. I think, you can call it what you want, but it is not an equal playing field. And then I also was very keen on working with our Office of Research to include the arts, humanities, and social sciences, because I'm very impressed by these huge federal research grants that STEM faculty can apply to, but they need to work with us too. We can integrate, we can come up with models that bake in the humanities and the arts from the beginning so that we're not so siloed. We tend to be marginalized, and I'm not very keen on that. So we're working on that. All right, so what I had to do when I first got here is, what is this new school? We're now 10 departments. We used to be 17. So some of the departments went to the School of Education, Counseling, and Psychological Sciences, namely social work and psychology. Some of the STEM departments, math, physics went to the School of Science and Engineering, or sorry, yeah, that's what it's called. And then we are, you know, your humanities, history, English. I do have a slide that will list all the departments. And we created some new departments. We've merged some departments. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But to me, what we needed to do is figure out who are we? So let's work internally. Let's figure out how we can meet each other. Some faculty don't know each other. How can we create some synergies? So starting in the fall, we're doing research clusters, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then how do we connect out to other schools? The Block School, the School of Medicine, you heard that I work with medical humanities, but also community members. How can our committees, for example, so I know Mike is interested in international. I just learned that we got a booth at the Ethnic Enrichment Festival. How many people have been to that festival? Okay, you all have to go. I'm just telling you, come visit our booth. It's phenomenal. There are 40,000 Kansas Cityans from all over the world who show up. You eat the most delicious food, you see dances, you learn about culture, and we want to show we care about that. Come to our school. We've never had any university at that festival have a booth before. So I was like, Nate Addington, Community Relations, could you please spend the money to get us a booth? He's like, sure. It's not that expensive. Otherwise, he would have been no. Let's be honest. Okay, so here are the 10 departments. Sorry, the font is a bit small, but you can see we have criminal justice and criminology, world languages and cultures. It used to be called foreign languages and literatures. Okay, so we just changed the name. Economics, communication and journalism, race, ethnic and gender studies, media, art and design. Media, art and design has art, studio art, art history, and film and media studies all in one, and design. We have graphic art. Sociology and anthropology. We merged political science and philosophy together. Political science comes out of philosophy. You studied that. Psychology comes out of philosophy. You knew that. History and English. So these are the folks that I work with on a daily basis. The chairs meet with me once a month. We talk about the issues with the students, recruitment, retention. How can we explain to people on the ground that this work matters? You can get a successful job working in the liberal arts. We learn critical thinking, excellent communication, writing skills. We just had an alumni panel with these amazing people who spoke to the students about how, hey, it is the road less traveled. It's not a professional track, but we will support you in finding your place here. And the students said it made a huge difference in their perspective because some of them are graduating and they're thinking about their future. So moving to an R1, I am super committed, and I was just talking to the Vice Chancellor for Research, Chris Liu, that the humanities are essential for us if we want to move from an R2, which is still very high level research, but we want to move to R1, the humanities have to be there. In terms of Carnegie classification, you have to have doctoral students from the humanities graduate for us to count and join that club. So it made sense for me to come to the school. This is exactly what I like doing. You have amazing faculty here. You have incredible students. This is perfect for me, I feel. How can we think about how our disciplines can make a difference in the world? That is something that our community will understand. And so we're training up our faculty to do the peer review journal articles, but also have public facing communication and learn how to write an op-ed for the New York Times so that we have a place on the map. So you can see how I'm helping with external funding opportunities. We really want our undergraduates, especially, to be in research grants with our faculty. This helps with retention. This is not just giving them opportunities in their careers, but it keeps them here. They're not bored. They don't have anomie, they're not floating around. They're actually engaged and integrated with us. So that's part of what I'm trying to promote. So this research cluster idea, we did a survey. We asked the faculty, what does your research identify, like what themes resonate with you? What kind of research are you working on? And we came up with a list. The faculty developed a list of 20 research areas. Okay, we are 10 departments. We don't need 2 clusters per department. That's too many. We narrowed it down and then we offered to incentivize our faculty to co-direct these research clusters. So we want to create like a lab with co-directors and monthly meetings to work on topics. Well, we identified 6 research clusters. For example, of course, health, you heard, that's kind of big, right? Health, environment, what else is public policy, social justice. So we have quite a few really interesting topics and faculty signed on. They said, we are incredibly busy, but we want to do this. So these teams of people throughout the school are going to start meeting. Once we have the research clusters going, we will have a grant development officer come to the meetings and say, I've identified this digital humanities grant for you. By the way, we started a center called the Center for Digital and Public Humanities with the libraries. They're a cluster. So now people will join and say, let's write a grant together. Let's get students to be part of our grant. We're going to be visiting science and technology. They have a digital humanities lab in the fall. I mean, you know, I know we have to compete, but I like collaboration a lot. So why don't we get together and write a grant together? Or Missouri, like the coasts are always getting the grants, right? So let's do this. We just hired a research mentor, full professor in anthropology. She's amazing. She's getting the new faculty on board. We're having lunches for them. We're showing them the ropes. They're the really research active people. They're coming from Duke University, all these high-level schools. Like, let's keep them engaged. You know, as faculty, at a certain point, you keep getting ranked up and it just becomes like, not as much incentive. These folks want tenure, so they want to be engaged. Let's harness that energy. Let's help them. So we're doing that. And then this is what I was saying before. So 6 viable groups, and it's interdisciplinary. I purposefully chose 2 co-directors from different departments to work together. Somebody said, we want 2 people from this department. Can we be a team? I was like, no. The point is we have to have the different angles, the different perspectives, and then we'll bring in science and engineering. We'll bring in the block school. We'll bring in the conservatory, right? There's so many ways we can overlap. So I'm really proud of this initiative that we did this semester, which is the public facing communication. We hired our own faculty to be our own trainers. Instead of getting outside consultants, we're paying them. We're not paying them the money consultants make, no, but something, right? And they're training up our faculty how to speak with media outlets. So we went into a production studio, Steve Kraske, who a lot of you know, and Nick Matthews, who's a new journalism professor. They trained up our faculty. When you write a book, how are you going to speak to the news media? What are you going to say? What's the soundbite? Are you going to use 50-cent words? Are you going to speak clearly? How are you going to be effective? What if they ask you a really nasty question? Okay, what if you go on certain outlets that are very sensationalist? How are you going to react? Are you going to answer them? Or are you going to change the answer based on what you want to say? Right? So it's these strategies. So we did that training. We taught people how to do a TEDx talk. We just had Clancy Martin. He's in my department. He was just on Fresh Air with Terry Gross. He wrote a very difficult topic related book on suicide and how to prevent it. But now, you know, I hooked him up with a university in India where they're having the same problem with their young people. He gave a beautiful presentation on how to write an op-ed for the New York Times. Like, we're talking top level. He's like, you got to try. And if they say no, then keep going down, 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 down. Don't start down here, aim high. So this is what I like. Like, let's fly, everybody. Let's try. Academic blogging, and then we're working with MU Extension. This year, 2 extension staff that are typically in Columbia are now embedded at UMKC. I think they're in your office, the provost office, MU Extension.
Yeah, they are.
Shatomi, Edward Lester, and GK Callahan, they are both very keen on getting our faculty and students to work in communities. They're not in Columbia, they're here. They want us to work. Look, Ivanhoe neighborhood, 7 minutes away. One of our alums came over and he's like, Tamara, nobody knows about UMKC. They don't feel welcome here. They don't know anything. We're working on getting a big billboard in this park with UMKC. They want that. So let's do more of the local connection. So that's what we're doing as well with our faculty. So what's interesting about the School of Humanities and Social Sciences is we don't have the same accreditation limitations from national associations that limit how many students can be in the classroom. So the sky's the limit, assuming that, we have support and infrastructure for our faculty. So we can recruit heavily our undergrads, and we really want to do that. And the whole university this year has done very well. We're up 10%. The chancellor gave a beautiful State of the University address. It's recorded. You can watch it. Our school is no exception. We have done very well in recruiting, but what we need to work on is retention. And that's why I'm focusing on the research, the extracurricular activities, keep them engaged. A lot of times they have to take a class. They're not that interested. Pull them in, make them do a research poster, make them do something, right? So we're looking at online, we're looking at changing the curriculum to make it kind of fun and relevant using popular culture, but what they don't know is actually you're going to learn some rigorous theory, but we're not going to put that in the title of the class. We're going to talk about Beyonce, and then they're going to say, yay, and then we're going to be like, aha, critical theory. And then they'll say, wow, that's really cool and interesting because she actually studies that too, quite intellectual woman. And then, of course, we're trying to work on K through 12. How do we get high school students in? And we've done quite a bit of that. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Okay, I have a lot here, so I'm going to just put this all down so we don't spend a lot of time. Okay, so as I mentioned, how can we get our students to engage experientially? What I learned was students remember their professors. They kind of remember what they learned in class, but they really remember what they did outside of class. They remember the clubs, they remember the field trips, they remember the parties, which I don't organize except for in our department for fun with, non-alcoholic drinks. They remember research away, they remember study abroad. Research away is doing domestic travel where they have a research project. Can they do archival work? Can they work on a book project with their faculty member? How can they work in a deeper level of understanding? Can we do more mentoring? Can we have peer-to-peer mentoring? Figuring out ways to continue to engage with students. Mental health, communities of care. Clancy Martin talked about that with the Indian University. How do we have more supports for our students? This is a really difficult time post-pandemic. A lot of people don't know how to engage face-to-face. They need support. So do our faculty, by the way. They get really overwhelmed too. And our staff. Advisory board connections. We have a lot of work that we're doing with alumni. We have an alumni board. They have helped fund student projects. They've been really crucial to our success. Oh, and then we had an internship fair this year that was really successful. I have a separate slide. Sorry, it's such small lettering. But look at all the internship providers that we had, and they met with social sciences and humanities students. You can see this is a brand new photo of how crowded it is in Pearson Auditorium. You can see City Union Mission, the World War I Museum, the Police Department of Overland Park, the Pitch. All the 10 departments were represented in terms of jobs, and a lot of our alums helped us secure these internships. We had 7 students hired. We are really aiming for paid internships. The students are working more than ever. It's too expensive for them. We don't think that unpaid internships are the way to go. Look, Te Lo Cuento News, you have a bilingual newspaper, so we're using our languages. Missouri Department of Health, Social Services. You can see, so this was a very successful day. We had 40 undergrad students. I want more next year. But students were very, very pleased to have some help in the career space. So we're really working on that too. Okay, yeah, I am gonna show off about myself. Indulge me. So being a film professor, Caitlin Horsman is my colleague. She's the one here on the left. She's been taking students to the True False Film Festival in Columbia, Missouri for many years. And guess what? I did the same thing at KU with my students, and we would actually meet there because we've known each other for a long time. So of course I had to do it again with UMKC students. These students were so phenomenal. We were in auditoria with literally 1,200 people and the filmmaker in the audience. These are all Sundance awarded documentary films with the director in tow. And our undergrads are raising their hands and they're saying, could you please explain what happened in this film? What was the logic behind X and Y? And Caitlin and I are, I'm going to use a Yiddish word, cavelling. We're so proud. We're so proud of our students. They are brave. They're asking the questions. So this is exactly the kind of thing that we want to encourage. I'm very interested in the international space. Again, I'm kind of embarrassed that I'm in all these photos. Just bear with me. But look at this. We're in Seoul. We're in South Korea in October. I'm with Jeremy Slagofsky. He's the assistant dean for the Applied Language Institute. That's also in my school, where we're training up international students to speak English. And then they stay on and they study with us. So here we are at Samyang University in Seoul. This is the Dean of International Affairs. His wife was my student at KU. Full disclosure, it does not hurt to network. I'm teaching that to the students. This does not hurt. He's like, oh yeah, UMKC, I know that school. Yeah, you're coming. Well, 10 of his students came over in January already. They know the quality. It's just rising to the top with so many schools competing for these students. So that was great. And then for every 10 students that come from South Korea, we send one full ride to their university. So how did we do this? We didn't want to handpick the student. Oh, you get to go. Here's the boondoggle. You know, you get a special treat. No, we did Experience Korea Day at the library. And we had hundreds of students show up, Korean food, Korean cultural dance, and we had 2 K-pop dancers. You know, K-pop? Of course, that's why they came. We know about pop culture. Hundreds of students showed up. They ate delicious food. They watched the spectacle. All these students singing the words to the lyrics, okay? And the idea is come here and sign up if you're interested. We will send you for free for a semester to 2 universities who sent 20 students total. So that was amazing and fun. Okay, I'm finishing up my presentation. We just did this April 21st. This was the inaugural ribbon cutting of the school. We're letting alums who are formerly from arts and sciences to know that if you were on the humanities and social science side, you're now at our school. This is your home now. So we organized a whole day. It was exhausting. My staff were kind of irritated with me, but I wanted to do something really big and we were really ambitious. So we had, and of course, this was the culminating event. The Freedom Riders came to Kansas City, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But that day we had a luncheon for our donors. We had, what else did we do? We had a student research showcase at Pearson where I told you, let's get the students to do stuff. So they had a wonderful research showcase with all these posters. The day before was the undergraduate research symposium, and there were maybe 4 students from my school represented. There were, all the other schools had many more students participate. So we took those 4 students of ours, brought them over the next day, added another 10 students to the mix. And all these faculty and students showed up. All 10 departments were in situ. And then we had that career panel. We had the alums speak about the road less traveled, careers in the humanities and arts and social sciences. So then in the evening, we were able to bring 4, and 4 is really important, 4 Freedom Riders. Dion Diamond wasn't in this photo. He wasn't feeling well the first night. We spoke at the GEM Theater. So this is the GEM. This is that community relations that we're talking about. About 100 people showed up at the GEM to hear the Freedom Riders. The next day, we had 200 people come to Pearson. All of this is free. We had high school students speak to the Freedom Riders in the morning. And I'm really excited about this. This was my colleague, David Trowbridge, in history. He knew the Freedom Riders because he had worked with them at a previous university. And he told me that Oprah Winfrey, when she was finishing her time on TV, had a reunion of all the remaining Freedom Riders. There were like 150 Freedom Riders who came on her show. Well, next to Oprah, we are the next biggest with only 4, but they'd never brought so many Freedom Riders together. Everybody lives in a different city, but I was asked, Tamara, will you fund more than one? Can we have them all have a reunion? I was like, Yes, this would be amazing. So we got some coverage from the Pitch magazine. We had a great turnout. These were phenomenal speakers. Bernard Lafayette has written a recent book about his time working for SNCC and Martin Luther King and what it was like in the 60s. They are history. They're history, a moment in history, and we need to remember them. And we need to teach the students because their values of civil rights espouses exactly what our school is about. So I felt really happy that this would be our crowning event of our alumni come home day. We called it the showcase. And I'm very pleased about how that worked, but we're still pretty tired about it. So just future ideas, working with alumni, advisory boards. How do we tell the story of our school? We're a new school. People don't know about us yet. Now you know about us. You have ideas. I'm trying to connect with different groups. Like Bonnie told me about the Edgar Snow Foundation. They just asked me to serve on the board. So, I'm making some connections here and we want to help not only our students, but how can they support community efforts as well? How can we rise together? So these are just some of the ideas, fundraising, bi-directional initiatives. It's not us saying, hey, community members, you need this. They'll be like, what are you guys talking about? What did you do to us 100 years ago? No, thank you. Develop relationships. Have our students work as interns in community nonprofits, those sorts of things. So these are the ideas that we have. I think I'm going to end there. So lots of future directions. I'm open to your ideas. I know I said a lot, but you can see the level of enthusiasm that we have. The faculty are doing a lot. They're thriving. The students seem to be doing well too. We'll see. They'll be graduating in a few weeks. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I think now is
We
the
have 15 minutes. Okay.
Few questions.
Great.
And for you to- Lots to open up and ask.
Yeah. So if you have questions, please introduce yourself though and tell me what what you did here. Yes.
Syed Hassan, I have had been a professor in the Department of Geosciences.
Okay.
My specialty is environmental science. Written 2 textbooks in the field.
Wonderful.
I think what you told me tells me that you have brought in a lot of energy, enthusiasm, and new ideas, which was lacking in my time, frankly speaking. I've been retired for about 10 years now.
Okay.
I think that is the direction to go. Pulling the graduate students who feel always directionless, engaging them in some kind of this research project with the faculty. I think that is very powerful way to retain them. And your comment about away from the class experience, of course, in geoscience, we do that all the time, field trip. That's what they remember.
Yeah,
That's what they remember.
that's exciting stuff.
And that is a good way to reach back to the alums. Yeah, well,
They
we're there.
remember.
That's right, they remember.
Right.
So I think that's great. And just by way of suggestion,
Okay.
Linda Hall Library is a great resource, local resource next to our campus. That is something that you might think of tapping.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Actually, 2 of our faculty are fellows there right now.
Really?
Yes, in science and technology field.
Yeah.
And I will say I focus a lot on the undergrad because we're mainly undergrad, but we do have 4 graduate programs in our school. And we're about to get the green light to start a standalone PhD in economics. And we are going to have a standalone PhD in digital and public humanities that's maybe going to have a concentration in science and technology studies. So I totally agree with you. We've been talking about how do we start making connections with Linda Hall. So to be continued. Thank
Great
you.
resource there, great
Thank you.
resource,
Great point.
unbeatable, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Their
Thank
special collections
Oh my
are unbelievable,
One of
and
a kind.
they go back to Galileo, and I mean, it's
Yes.
truly amazing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we need to start making, I don't know, there's been some rocky history there with our school or something like that. So you gotta tread lightly, but we're gonna work on that. But thank you, great point. Other questions? Yeah, ideas, feedback? Yes.
I know some of us are involved in volunteer activities outside of the university. And I can think of one that I know of in Ivanhoe, in that neighborhood that you're trying, that I could envision a project with students. And I just wonder how we feed ideas to you, if there are potential, I mean, I can't say for sure, but if there are
Sure.
potential ideas.
Well, great question. So as far as the Ivanhoe neighborhood goes, we know two community partners. One is Harris Park. So this is Chris Harris, who was the one that said, I want a billboard with UMKC because I'm doing these athletic camps, but the reality is that 5% of the camp is athletics, 95 is growth mindset. You know, this is a brilliant guy who's helping students see that there's a world out there. So we're working with him, and he's also working with theater in the conservatory. So, you know, we are all in this together. And then there's a woman Alana Henry, who runs the Young Family Farm. So we've been in touch with her, but I think the best way is just let me know, like, hey, I'm in touch. Every month when the chairs and directors meet with us in the dean's office, we have a community partner attend. And they talk about the Giving Grove, or they talk about the Chamber of Commerce welcoming KC that works with immigrants and refugees. So if there's a nonprofit you work with, maybe they could come and speak with the chairs, and then the chairs say, aha, my faculty could do a project in this class with you. That was the idea. Okay, so please let me know. Other questions? Yes, or comments?
I'm Linda Breitsbrock, and I was in the sociology department
Great.
and anthropology, and actually I came from Duke.
Oh,
So
there
I'm
you go.
interested to know about your anthropologist
Okay,
from there.
yes.
One of my passions was aging, and the aging program has gone by the wayside. But we had a certificate program and an undergraduate minor.
Okay.
And one of the requirements in both of those was that students do an internship to finish the program. So we had lots of contacts all over the community, which, you know, I might be able to help you with some of those. I still have some of those contacts.
That's wonderful. That would
And
be
I
great.
I worked for years with University of Missouri Extension.
Oh,
Too,
very
we had a Missouri Gerontology Institute, which was aligned with Extension.
That's outstanding. I think we could do more with extension. One thing I should say is that with this Digital Humanities Center, we're talking a lot about mapping projects and learning tools and training students on different tools. But all along in the law school, they've been working on broadband, how to have more access in the inner city and also the rural communities. So I tried to bring the broadband people with the digital humanities people. I think a lot of times we do so many amazing things throughout the university, but we don't even know what we're doing. So it really helps me to know what you've done, you know, what we might continue to work on, you know, like, why do we have to just start all over again? We should continue some of the good work that's been done. So thank you. Yes.
I've got a kind of a high level university wide. But let me do a footnote first. I just love your enthusiasm and all the ideas going on. My part of my mind was saying she must go crazy because she's got so many objectives out there. Which 5 do I work on today and which other 10 do I work on tomorrow? Good luck with that. You know, that's the nature of the job. I understand.
Sure.
I'm concerned at a very high level, societally, but it was also at the university for resource allocation. I'm an economist. I was part of the economics department.
Wonderful.
I'm concerned at the high level here, the emphasis on STEM and how that is robbing the humanities. And I think in a political sense, making your school strong within the university and competing with the powerful forces pushing STEM everywhere, that the humanities deals with values. It conveys passes on values, which is pretty important to the world. I love the connections you're talking about working in the community, because the STEM people don't know how to work in the community. And you, that may be an angle to strengthen the department within the university for resources.
Definitely. I mean, I really appreciate your point because I feel very awkward about hitting one group with another. I think the STEM folks are starting to see the value that we bring. It's also the way that grants are structured. Like I'm saying, an NSF and all these big federal research grants, they're great. Like, Pete Buttigieg just came to campus around this transportation grant. So immediately I was like, okay, well, where is economics? Why aren't we in the grant? There was a big EPA grant. I'm happy to say that our historians did get put on that grant. So it's also, we need to be looped in more, and we've always kind of been sidelined. And so I don't have a complex about that. I'm constantly talking to people and saying, oh, sciences, that's awesome. How can we find a means of collaboration? So it's people like you who are alums who see the value that support this. And we have philosophy. They are all interested in ethics, bioethics, legal ethics, so many ethical questions about our society. AI, ChatGPT, that's a hot thing right now. We can be part of that conversation. So it's also figuring out how we are relevant, how we can bring skill sets to the fore to answer these difficult questions and not be seen as this very frivolous thing that isn't useful. It's extremely useful. So that's why I'm trying to get the faculty to translate their research into these larger questions. So we do have an environmental cluster that's going to be headed by a historian and an economist. And so I'm trying to connect them with Extension. Extension is about to do a conference on, it's called Climate Controlled Agriculture. They're concerned that with climate change, that our soil is no longer going to produce our vegetables with the same nutrient content. So they're creating huge hydroponic systems indoors. So that's kind of interesting. And, we can disagree with it like, okay, that's horrible. We can't even use our land. Let's try to save the land. But how are you going to pollinate things? Where are the bees going to come in inside these big buildings? Well, they're going to build a huge structure here in Kansas City. We need to be a part of it. What are the ethical implications? Who does get access to the food? Who gets to participate in this new economy? Who's in it and who's out of it? So I am totally with you. And if you have some econ internship opportunities where we're teaching them ethical ways of working in our community, I'm super on board. And the good news is, so are my faculty and so are my students. It's a breath of fresh air. So as the more we can let people know, the more they'll see, hey, we can help you. It's not about you always helping us. We can help you.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other comments or questions? These have been great questions, by the way. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm here. I am always telling people my door is open. I get lonely in my office. I love to chat. Come visit me. Come tell me about the volunteer work you're doing. I'm happy to engage with you. So thank you.
Thank you.